No, Todd, not now.
You must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
That's right, Paul. Hello and welcome back inside the Parc Fermé for podcast number 738, the Styrian Grand Prix review. Where is Styria anyway? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that and more. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now.
AKA Negative Camber. You know why I've asked you here.
You must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
That's right. We're going to be talking about the Styrian Grand Prix. You know how we do this.
We watch one, then we talk about it. Then we watch one, then we talk about it. Come on, Todd.
That's right. Hey, but before doing that, I have to introduce my guest tonight, which, as you know, he is the human Mentos. He is the fresher.
That's so bizarre. That's such a, I don't know where that came from, but it should be put back there.
You're the fresh maker, Paul. Come on.
Am I now?
That's right.
Wrecked from out of the wasteland. He's bad. He's beautiful. He's crazy. It's
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
Paul, I got to start by a couple caveats here. First, you aren't at home in your normal kit. You're from a motel room on a pair of earbuds and a microphone and a laptop, which is not easy, but it does show the commitment that you're willing to make to sit here and do a podcast while you are sitting just outside Watkins Glen, where you just had another podium.
Yes, we did.
Yes. Congratulations.
Yes. Thanks, man. It was a tough weekend, and yeah, I mean, we've obviously been on a few podiums now, but this one was pretty special because of all the issues we had leading up to the race that we overcame right before the race. We had we were chasing some handling issues on the car that we only found out what that issue was right after the warm-up, and so we had to change some major suspension components right before we got started the race, and that fixed some of the woes, and so we were able to charge us up from our lowly grid position and just keep moving forward, and eventually pulled it off and ended up on the podium, which was a really, really mega job by the team and by all three drivers. Ian came back, and his first two stints really set the stage for the driving standard that followed from Roman and Ross as well.
Ian was on it.
He was very fast, and he was as fast as the leaders. Unfortunately, because of the issues we had, we started back, so he had to fight his way up. But Ian was he was happy to be back, and he showed it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. You know, me coming on these podcasts and talking about you being on podiums, this is becoming a recurring theme.
I know, it's good stuff, right?
Yeah.
Second in championship still. Unfortunately, the BMW won the race.
Yeah.
And they're our rival right now, and so that was a little unfortunate. But as I said, considering where we started from, to come out with just losing a little bit to them and claiming more points on the rest of our rivals was significant for us.
Yeah. So it sounds like the Aston Martin, you had to do some last minute setup changes. That's kind of what Mercedes did this weekend. And we'll get into that in the review. I have interesting comments from the shove over there, so we'll get into some of those in a minute. Well, congratulations to you and the whole 23 team, the Aston Martin Heart of Racing team. It's awesome. You guys looked awesome. It's 6 hours. It's a 6-hour race at the Glen, and you had Ian and everybody back in behind the wheel. That's awesome.
Multiple pit stops, lots of drivers, lots of strategy going on. It's a lot to take in, a lot to stay on top of. So it's fun. Hopefully some other people got to watch it, because it was a fun race to be in, and I think it probably was a fun race to watch from the outside too.
Yeah. So did you guys beat that Westville kid?
Yeah, and Tyler. Did you meet Tyler before too? So two of my buddies, Jeff Westphal and Tyler, in the Audi, they didn't feature as high as they did the other race. So we didn't see them for the most part, but it was interesting actually. A young guy that I kind of helped out a little bit was actually in one of the cars we were battling for the podium with. So I was like, so he came up to me, Ross, after the race. He was like, I just got to thank you for, helping me get this opportunity. I was like, that's okay. Just drive slower, can you? So.
Just let us go by.
Let us go by. But we had to fight that out as well. So
oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Good time. Well, I don't know if it was as exciting as the Watkins Glen race, but we did have the Styrian Grand Prix this weekend. A couple of key elements going into this weekend. The track, which was interesting due to the elevation of the Red Bull Ring in the Styrian region of Austria. The track was super hot. So ambient may have been around 80 degrees Fahrenheit, but the track was over 120 degrees. So very hot track. We also entered the race with Valtteri Bottas getting that grid penalty for spinning in the pit lane, trying to put some rubber down. That was not good. And the radio was, well, how's the tire warm up? And then he goes, the guy on the team said, not good, apparently, because he spun around in pit lane. That was not good.
Everyone was watching the recap on that one.
Yeah. They were like, ooh. Yeah.
Don't want to be that guy. Don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy, Valtteri. Yeah, not good. So, Paul, there's only 6 turns this track or so. Not a big track, but we've talked about this in the past. It's not to be underestimated how difficult this track is to master, because when you only have 6 turns, every single one of them has to be perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to count, right? And it's kind of like, you're on a string and you're wigging it around and you're just trying to hold that car in from flying out and hitting the wall, right? So you're really on a knife edge the whole time. And as you said, it's few turns, so you can't hide if you're not good in one of those. So you really, and it's a constant, just the quick laps, really beat you up as a driver. You don't get a lot of relaxing at this track, and every turn, as I said, is really your full commitment, especially the last 2 turns. I mean, it's like the first one on the downhill is enough, but then you got to follow out. We're gathering everything up and then getting the car turned in for that last turn onto the main straight. That's really where a lot of lap time can be lost.
Do you think that turn 9-10 complex is one of the more tougher ones?
I think it's one of the toughest combinations on the circuit of the whole season. Yeah. Super fast. As I said, you're really on a knife edge there, and if you get one bit wrong, you're really going to come a cropper at the following turn as well.
Right.
So, really tough.
Yeah, it's tough with 10 turns on a total track like that. It's pretty tough. And I think that 9-10, this is where they had those track limit issues, right? They're running wide during Friday, which exploring the outer regions of the track there. But just, and that's one of the thing I've always loved about Schumacher, and Lewis does this to a T, is on those Friday practices, you'll see him run wide, run off. He's always finding the absolute maximums, 9 and 10. They felt like those were gaining advantages, but those 2 left-handers in 6 and 7 are really critical. And then also, Paul, you've got that uphill braking zone to 1, I guess, or is it 3? And then conversely, you've got a downhill braking zone after.
The downhill, I'd say the uphill is fairly straightforward, and the uphill kind of catches you under braking. It helps you slow down too. But the downhill, that's when the car's just trying to push forward and you're just trying to get it to do something it really doesn't want to do on the downhill. It doesn't want to brake and it doesn't want to turn at that point. And then, as you said, those 2 double lefts, once again, kind of like 9 and 10, where one really affects the other. And it's really, you treat it as one complete turn, even though it is for sure 2 turns, but the momentum from one leads to the momentum in the other, and the balance you have coming out of the first one really affects how you get into the second one.
Yeah, it's a tough track, and I know we talked about it. I think last year we talked about this, about how those errors, if you're not quite getting that turn 6-7 complex right, or that 9-10 right, and you're a 10th off or something like that, or even 100th. It's linear. It compounds so quickly. Absolutely. And all of a sudden you're 30 seconds behind,
very easily. Yeah.
And there's not a lot of corners you can make that up, or find areas that you can get more aggressive on to make up the deficiency you have in say 9 or 10,
Yeah. I mean, there isn't a lot, yes, you can run out wide a few times, but you can't do it very often, but there's not a lot of room to make a mistake, unlike some other tracks. The penalty is big for going wide, losing.
Yeah. So, and I understand that this race watching it at home may have been a little more of a pedestrian race, but I did want to bring that up about the track because your track talks in the past and what we've talked about. This is not an easy track. And so while the guys made it look easy on Sunday, it's not. It's a pretty difficult track. So let's talk about how they finished. The winner, Max Verstappen in P1, Sergio Perez down in P4. Max won pretty much in convincing style. He may have put to rest that whole notion or the thought that maybe Red Bull's performance was kind of track specific. I think at this point we can say that Red Bull's performance is not track specific. They're just good everywhere right now.
Yeah.
Max's third win and 4 races was done by creating a 4 to 5 second gap to Lewis, and this had the Mercedes team pretty much covered. Max could just react to whatever strategy they may deploy at that point in time. It'd be different if there was only a couple seconds or a second and a half just out of DRS range. Maybe the undercut, the overcut could have got a little tactical with it, but when you've got a 4 or 5 second gap, you can kind of manage the race from that point, and that's what he did. Max as a team is obviously going to learn from this weekend. They look to repeat this next weekend. He said the car worked very well and that he was a little surprised that he can manage his tires and also set the pace and gap to Mercedes as much as they did.
Yeah. I mean, they've definitely got their head around that car, right? And the tire itself. I mean, in Watkins Glen here, it was very hot, and same drill as what was happening in Austria is you're dealing with a lower threshold of grip, and it's very easy to go way beyond that in those hot conditions. That it's very finite. You can really overextend those tires, and then you're just lost. So definitely the performance of the Red Bull is leaning towards it being the superior car this year, which is great to see, right? I mean, It's like, how long have we waited for this moment? And then we're going to change it all next year. So I was like, I don't know, but. Yeah, it's really good to see that both Max, I think, and the Red Bull car and the team are just kind of peaking all at the same time right now, and they're reaping the benefits of it, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. For Sergio, he boxed again for fresh rubber to run Bottas down, but he ran out of laps. Unfortunately, Sergio started on the soft compounds, and this left Red Bull's options open to anticipate any Mercedes strategy magic that they might pull off. What I mean by that is it kept Lewis honest from any sort of like potential early stop, because that would have put him back in the clutches of Sergio. And so Red Bull running that split strategy, Sergio on softs, Max on mediums. Max is out setting the pace. They had Lewis boxed in. Very little Lewis could do at that point because anything would have put him in the clutches of Sergio. Mm-hmm. Or anything, because Max had clawed out a 4 or 5 second gap that kept Lewis at bay there too. So they kind of were frozen a little bit about what Mercedes could do, and that was just down to some good strategy by Red Bull. Sergio, obviously a master of tire management, he actually said that the softs were worse than what the team had expected or what they thought they were going to be, and that they suffered towards the late part of their first stint. And so the two-stopper didn't quite work due to traffic, unfortunately. And they did stop and tried to get that fastest lap away from Lewis, but Lewis ended up getting him back. So as much as I think, when they boxed him again, put him on fresh rubber, he ran out of laps, but he was going to catch Bottas there towards the end. He just ran out of laps to do so. I think it would have worked, but in the whole big picture, I think the strategy worked out perfectly for Red Bull, with Sergio being back in third, fourth, and keeping Lewis and Mercedes pretty much frozen.
Yeah, and it's something that Red Bull, it's new to Red Bull having that second bullet in the gun, right? You cannot undermine the positive impact that Perez has on Max's championship.
Right.
I mean, there's given them options, given them something they haven't had before. They haven't had someone that can actually, put a spanner in the works of the Mercedes team. I mean, they were able to basically dictate strategy, and everyone had to try and cheat their way into a different place. But now, with Sergio backing up Verstappen as strong as he does, and his tire management, which the other teams know about, even though he's starting on the softs, they know he's not just going to, rail back it kept the pressure on and limits their options absolutely. And so, and Mercedes haven't had to deal with these kind of strategy calls or problems for a very, very long time.
Right.
And so now they're having to kind of relearn how they run a race. And I mean, as much as it worked for Verstappen before the other race where he was able to catch Lewis, we did say it was a bit perilous and a bit of a narrow margin. And if you get traffic, and we know because of the tight confines of Styria or Austrian Grand Prix, that traffic can really put a big issue on a lap time. Just one back marker can hold you up and cause you a lot of time loss, and that's technically what knocked him out. But it was worth a try. And even so, as you said, I think the strategy still worked great in securing Max without an unpressured win, really.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Toto suggested that the Honda engine a week or two ago, he said, yeah, well, the Honda engine is really developing well. And technically it's not. It's frozen technically. So it's not developing. I think what you're seeing here is just pure aerogenius at work, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's using an engine that is thereabouts with the Mercedes, but this is just Adrian Newey and the staff and design engineers over at Red Bull really developing this car and just aerogenius, making this thing work. If you look at the size of that rear wing, Paul, at a track like this, when you would have thought they would have had more rear wing and they're running that thin wing, I don't know that there's a lot of other cars on that grid that could run that thin of a wing without it having a big impact in the corners, and they gained down the straight, but with that little wing, you'd expect them to lose in the corners. They didn't.
Right. They're maximizing drag versus downforce, which we saw last time, and it's exposed itself here as well. So we know that their genius is there, and there's certain things you can do with the engines, but the package as a whole is what they've got their head around. And we kind of saw it at the beginning of last year where Red Bull used to kind of start a bit floundering and had a lot to gain and could then gain maybe halfway through the season. They were always starting last year and this year at a much more competitive spot, and they're still making those same gains. It's just they started from such a higher level.
Yes. Yeah, it's exactly right. Let's talk about Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton, P2, Valtteri Bottas in P3. Lewis struggled to mount a challenge to Max and said that this weekend that ultimately Red Bull have 0.25 seconds advantage overall. And I got to be honest with you, I think he's spot on that assessment, Paul. I think that's basically where the Red Bull is, and it's what it's proven the last couple of races. And so I don't think Lewis was grabbing at straws or just making that number up. I think that's what the team believes. Lewis said it was a bit of a lonely race out there for him trying to keep up with Max. It was clear to him that the Red Bull have made some upgrades this weekend that are clearly working. He did make that late stop for fresh tires for the fast lap. He did claim fast lap, but could not mount a challenge for the win. And there was a couple moments there, Paul, on those tires, as they got a little older, boy, watching Lewis trying to manhandle the rear end of that car, stepping out. Woo.
Yeah, arms and elbows, man.
A lot of this.
That 1 to 4. Yeah, that was, he was, as Brundle said, he was just about crashed.
Yeah. Point, so. Yeah. Some good driving. And it was interesting to watch him struggle. And on Friday, the development program and where they were heading with that was kind of interesting. Andrew Shovlin at Mercedes said that they had gone for a bit of a wacky setup that pushed the car beyond what they normally would have done. And while it may be good for a single lap in the race, it may have cost them. And it may. This is 4 winless races in a row, and that's a record for this team in the hybrid era, Paul.
That's a long era.
Such has been their dominance that 4 winless races is a record. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Lewis was relishing a fight, and he's got a fight. I'm not sure he's relishing it so much right now. I think he thought they could always overcome it, even if someone did get a little close. But right now, they're on the back foot, and running the setup for a single lap is obviously means something's going on with those tires as the heat and pressures go up, and that's what you saw visually with
Mhm.
Lewis just, losing the rear end like that. That's very un-Mercedes like.
Yeah,
To
there
do
was
that. So
a moment too. I mean, the commentary crew said it was pickup, and it very well may have been. It just looked like there was some blistering on Valtteri's right rear, but I mean, it could have been pickup. I don't know, but sitting at home, it kind of looked like blistering. But anyway, Valtteri had a decent qualifying session, but his spin in the pit lane caused a 3-place grid penalty. That left him chasing Sergio Perez for most of the day. In order to get the podium, he had to get past Lando early on, and then a slow pit stop by Red Bull gave him the position, but he had to work hard to hang on to that spot with older tires. In the end, starting at 5th and finishing 3rd with Lewis ahead of him was the best case scenario for damage limitation for Mercedes at this point. That's the best they could do. But yeah, that slow stop for Sergio was kind of the death knell on that left rear, and that handed the podium to Bottas.
Yeah, definitely handed to. I'm not sure he earned it so much, but I think that's a shame for Sergio for that. But these pit stops, split seconds, even if they are going to try and slow him down or whatever they're going to do. But it was a decent weekend for Bottas. I think that spin really kind of that was unfortunate for anyone's career. Quite honestly, it's not helping him any again. I'm sure George Russell was enjoying replaying that in his room all night long. Yeah.
Yeah. And I loved your friends over McLaren quickly jumping on the radio to Michael Mast and said, "Oh, come on, Michael, that was ridiculous. They, could have taken our whole crew out."
Yeah, trying to kill us.
Yeah. Valtteri's trying to kill us all.
Yeah, the Scandinavian flick. Yeah, it didn't quite work out for him. Yeah, he just had a little bit too much steering, and then the momentum of the car just went around him unexpectedly for him. And yeah, that's an embarrassing moment he wants to bring back, I'm sure.
Yeah. There was another interesting comment that was made out of the Mercedes camp this weekend. And whether it's true or not, we'll find out. But Mercedes and Toto Wolff were claiming that they wouldn't be doing any further development to their car this year.
Mm-hmm.
And they said that decision has been made for a while. And if you were going to make that decision, you would have had to make it. This company doesn't change like that on a dime as far as big plans like this. I find that odd. I don't know if that's head games or not. If it is, then, good on them. But if it's true, I'm just curious. It just seems like an odd thing to do for a team as dominant and good as Mercedes is. It makes you wonder if the cost cap and getting poached isn't starting to reveal the cracks or fissures in the team. It makes you wonder if that cost cap impact is them stopping development and focusing 100% because they want another dynasty and a new era of regulations.
Yeah.
I don't know why you couldn't do either. I also think it's really good head games in saying that, well, we're going to stop. So, if Max wins the title, it's because we weren't trying.
Yeah, I'm gonna start with the word starts with a bull and ends in something else, right? I don't believe a word of it. There's no way that team, their DNA and Toto especially, are just going to kind of start writing off the season because Lewis is 15 points behind winning his 8th championship. I don't see that at all. And the depth, it's not like they're Haas, where they've only got like 3 engineers and 2 pencils to use in the drawing room,
and
right?
2 rookies.
They've got the depth to be able to still develop as they go along, and I fully expect them to. But they may be downplaying it for head games with Red Bull, thinking, maybe they'll take their foot off the gas a little bit because Mercedes aren't really coming at them anymore. There's no way at this point of the season that Mercedes or any of that team are going to give up. And I think, that's just a bit of a game that they're playing. And it's a shame to say things like that because it may downplay, people's perception of what Max is doing, and the team as a whole is doing. But I cheer them on because, I said, Lewis and Mercedes, they were all excited about a real fight, but once the fight comes on, they run away. They're not French.
Yeah,
You know?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I find that kind of weird too. Once somebody starts getting, punches him and gives him a bloody nose,
Mhm.
you say, "Oh yeah, well, we're not developing. We're done." Yeah, and
Yeah.
just if Max wins, it's because we weren't trying. We weren't developing our car this year. So because of the cost cap we're focused on next year, I'm gonna throw a yellow card on that one myself.
For sure.
I think that's kind of BS, and you know everyone, all right, certainly I did. I got scolded for suggesting that Mercedes had such a baked in dominance for the last 5 years that, yeah, it does have an impact on all these titles that Lewis has, right? And it just does when you're clearly that dominant. But that didn't take anything away from Lewis, and I certainly wasn't taking anything away from. I think he's driving impeccably well.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the same of Max right now.
I mean, championships are not won by a driver; they're won by a team.
Yep.
And the driver is just one of those pivotal parts in the team. So, absolutely.
Yeah. McLaren, speaking of a team and a good driver, McLaren, Lando Norris, P5, Daniel Ricciardo down in P13. Lando had another terrific race, Paul, managing tires, ran long in that first stint, and this is what allowed him to move up in the order and then come home best of the rest, which is, in truth, another punch to the nose or another blow to Ferrari in the constructors' points. So a great race for Lando, Paul. This kid is just doing a phenomenal job this year. And it's just amazing to watch him bloom like this into an incredibly fast, incredibly measured young driver. Without, I would say, on balance, and I could be off on this, I need to go back and look. Been in Formula One a couple of years, but on balance, he hasn't done all this sort of silly stuff that you see a lot of rookies do when they get, including Max or sometimes with Lewis or Yuki or pick a couple rookies from the past, whether it was Gasly or Albon or any one of these young guys when they get in the series, like Nikita or Lance or whoever, they're gonna do stupid things, and you expect that. Because they're rookies that you expect. Right. That hasn't been a tremendous amount of drama with Lando, and now he's driving like a pro. Yeah,
you're right. I mean, most of his mistakes have been off the track, really.
Yeah.
But he's put him. I mean, we saw obviously full potential early on. Some of the drives he did and results he got early on was pretty remarkable. But it was a bit up and down in pace, but not in stupid, first corner nutter kind of moves. He just, sometimes he just couldn't put it all together, right? But now he can put it all together. I thought it was interesting that the McLaren just kind of called off a fight with the Mercedes and the Red Bull, just let them go, And because they were obviously running to keep that tire from undering, and by telling Lando to let him go, took the pressure off of him to try and push harder than he needed to do, because his goal is to beat the Ferraris and the Alpines, right? So, and that's
what they needed to do in order to keep that long stint, to keep those tires alive and to beat Ferrari.
Yeah.
But Paul, it's one thing if you were Lewis, you'd get that. But to be a young guy like Lando and you're up there gunning for a podium, you don't want to let those guys by, but he did, it was no problem.
Right. And for McLaren, I mean, unfortunately, he's kind of nearly doing it single-handedly right now.
Yeah.
And so it's even more crucial that he's putting his performances so high up in the pecking order to keep them ahead of the Ferrari team, who their two drivers are kind of performing very similar right now. And unfortunately, except for McLaren, Ricciardo's got some issues that they need to fix.
Well, Dan had a good start. He got up to 9th, but then he had this power glitch that dropped him all the way back like a stone back to where he started. And he lost everything he gained. Dan said he felt that without the power issue, he would have been 5th or 6th. In total, McLaren stay ahead of Ferrari in the constructors' titles chase, but Dan's power issue cost the team points, and they need those points, especially as both Ferraris finished ahead of Dan. So that's the challenge. Yeah, they really needed Dan to finish either better than Lando or behind Lando and ahead of the Ferraris to maximize points. Now, now McLaren still had a Ferrari. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, this is the struggle with Dan. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, no, and it's not just Dan. It's a team issue.
Yeah,
the Dan. Dan. We know what he's capable of, and the team need to come up. And Dan, and the team need to come up with a solution. Because Lando obviously is showing that the pace is there in the vehicle. And yeah, you always have a couple of races where something goes against you, like that power glitch or whatever. But overall, Dan's a bit behind the 8 ball, and it's about him meshing with the team or with the car or with certain idiosyncrasies of the car. But they need to get on it, pretty quick. Unfortunately, mid-season testing does not really happen, so they're going to have to simulate how to fix this problem with Dan and then try and back it up when it gets to the track. But they've got to get on top of that, not just focus on Lando, but focus on both cars getting higher up in the order. Yeah,
you got to get Darren farther up the grid. I liked when his race engineer called him Darren. And then he said, okay, let's box Darren. Dan, let's box, blah, blah, blah. So when Dan got into pit lane, he wrote back to the crew, he says, Darren in pit lane. It was great.
Well, didn't they mix him up and call him Carlos before as well earlier this year?
Maybe. Yeah.
I think they did. So that's you might be getting a complex pretty soon.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Let's talk about Ferrari. Charles Leclerc in P7. Carlos Sainz in P6. After a poor qualifying performance and a first corner clash with Pierre Gasly, prompting a stop, Charles managed to recover from dead last to the points in an aggressive and I would say somewhat inspired recovery drive with a new wing. Charles said from that lap onward, lap 2 onward, was one of his best drives in Formula One to date. And the car felt great from that point forward. So he was voted driver of the day on F1.com and had a great recovery all the way back up through the field. You could argue, Paul, pretty aggressive drive back. Not only did he have that coming together with Pierre, he took a chunk of Kimi's wing off in the process too. And it was an aggressive drive, but that's what I like about Charles.
Yeah, and he's had some great drives, and unfortunately, we know some of the greatest drives any driver does. It's not necessarily for a win. It's when you're fighting, tooth and nail, and clawing your way back from somewhere desperate, and that's exactly what Charles did. You would have thought he was done for the day, especially with how traffic works at this track and how close the midfield is anyway. For him to make up that many spots in this race really does kind of tell you the telltale that he gave it all, and he got a lot out of it as well, for sure.
Yeah. For Carlos, I was kind of wondering how the Carlos Sainz Ferrari era would turn out. And I got to tell you, I'm absolutely pleased as punch for Carlos and how quick he assimilated to that car, to the team, the results. He's got the measure of Charles right now. And I think a lot of folks thought that he was going to come into this team and Charles was going to mop the floor with him. And that has not happened. Carlos has his bad days like anyone else, but, had a great race here, finished P6. He ran a long first stint, was able to hold on to that position after his stop. He did have an interesting situation in that he had pace on fresh, hard tires, but spent quite a while behind Lewis trying to unlap himself. And he believed that may have cost him a chance for 5th place, trying to get back around Lewis. But in the end, I guess when I look at this weekend on balance, Paul, as a Ferrari fan, with my Ferrari hat on, I'm pretty pleased with it because they look to be heading for a very tough weekend again, based on their Friday pace and the Saturday qualifying. And I thought, this is going to be a tough weekend. But their race pace magically showed up, and it was quite a bit different than their quali pace. And so that means they minimized the points damage in the constructors title. Both of them got ahead of Dan at McLaren. So, things could be worse. And I thought it was going to be worse, but so far it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, going into the weekend, I thought they would actually be pretty good. The tire get some good energy into it. It's a good chassis that
Mhm.
they've figured out how to work, because and the engine's performing a little better. I actually thought they would do really well, but then, as you said, the practices and the qualifying, I'm like, oh man, this isn't good, you know.
Yeah.
But then somehow they were able to switch it on for the racing, kind of bring it back to where I was actually expecting to be from the get-go at the beginning of the weekend. So yeah, I definitely think that Ferrari's definitely improved. Definitely they'll be in there for the long run, fighting it out with McLaren. Carlos, I'm not sure if Carlos has the measure of Charles. I think they're very, very even, and they're going to ebb and flow as the season goes on. I think it's a good match.
Yeah,
for the
maybe
team.
I might be putting my foot in my mouth a little bit there, because you're probably right. I think they're both thereabouts.
Yeah.
As far, I think Carlos can deliver, Charles can deliver. I think I was probably using extremes there to make a point. I think a lot of people felt that Charles pretty much was going to have his feet on the desk, and Carlos was going to get kind of blown in the weeds, and that hasn't happened.
Right. And wherever Carlos goes, he kind of proves that, right? I know he had a dodgy season with Toro Rosso that one year.
Yeah.
But apart from that, he's been able to jump in new cars and perform and be able to understand the car very, very quickly. And he's done a lot of it. So he's got good experience of that, some jumping from team to team. So yeah, I think it's a good match. And those two guys, just like the McLaren, when we was at McLaren working with Lando, they need to work together as a team rather than focus on fighting each other in different parts of the garage, working as a team to bring the whole team up. And therefore that will then allow them to get better individual success in the future as well.
Yeah, good point. Aston Martin, Lance Stroll P8, Sebastian Vettel P12. Paul Lance had a terrific run, I thought. Well, he lost out to both the Ferraris. That was unfortunate, but he did respond with a terrific drive and a great pass on Fernando Alonso to nab 8th from the veteran. And yeah, it's kind of surprised me. I thought it was Seb at first, and I noticed it was Lance. He had a great race up into, spent most of the day in the points well up there. And then, like I said, the Ferraris got by him. Otherwise, he'd have done better, but ended up in P8, a great result considering where Seb finished.
Yeah, he's definitely evolving as a driver, more consistently got good pace. And we know he's kind of been a specialty expert, on certain tracks, certain conditions, where he does excel, but then sometimes been lost and out to lunch. But it seems the downs are lessening, and he's building this experience.
It's consistency.
Yeah, he's building experience up where he doesn't drop down and lose the plot during a weekend. But when the opportunity is there, he can really shine. So it's an interesting evolution of a driver with Lance.
It has been, and because we know, or at least I feel like, one of the things I think he's probably pretty good at is wet weather. And I've seen some pretty good races out of him in the rain. And like you said, it's that skill, it's that mental game of getting that consistency, always constantly showing up and driving and delivering, that consistent, that's one thing. Lewis had just become a juggernaut at that, right?
And consistency is a tough one to feel out, because it's not just being ready every week, right? Because every week has its own challenges. It's about having enough experience and thoughtfulness and approach to overcome whatever challenge it is that week, to bring yourself up to that level, instead of being despondent and losing, your confidence and these things, right? It's not about just showing up with this, I ate my, my pasta and my broccoli again, and I'm ready. I did my, it's really a complete body of work when you go to a race weekend, because the challenges are so different from race to race, with different cars, different weather, different tracks, etc. You just got to figure out how to get around those problems, and that brings up that consistency.
And that's, Fernando Alonso would be a good example of that. As a guy who can take that experience and adapt and overcome all kinds of different random things that come after you in a weekend, and not.
We definitely saw that in McLaren, right?
Yeah.
They had all kinds of problems when he was at McLaren this last time, but somehow he kept getting results out of it. So.
Right. Seb spent most of his day in the racing in the midfield with all the cars closely matched. It's difficult for him to get back up the order due to traffic. Seb said that when everyone is so evenly matched, these little factors can really impact your race, and following so closely means he was struggling for grip late in the race and couldn't get back up there. And to that point, Paul, this goes to what we said at the top of the cast. With 10 turns at this circuit, midfield, stuck in a train, all those tenths that you lose stuck back there have a huge impact on your entire race in aggregate. Yeah. And so that's what Seb is alluding to here. He had pace to run higher, but based on where he was with the traffic he was at, with 3 DRS zones back to back, it's difficult to do. It
is difficult. And the strategy, the team can do, there's only so much you can do with strategy, with so few pit stops, with one pit stop or whatever, and coming in and out at the right time with traffic, getting clean air, etc. You can have a competitive car and yet not be in the points right now because it is so tight. And it seems that as Lance proved, the car was capable of being in the top 10 and fighting it, with the Ferraris. But a little shuffle back here. There's just not much you can do, and especially in the layout of this track makes it difficult. Yeah.
For Alpine, Fernando Alonso P9, Esteban Ocon and P14. If you felt like McLaren was an example of the young gun besting the veteran, it's quite the opposite here at Alpine. Esteban finished 14th again, and he was effectively invisible out there on Sunday with little progress and was at a loss as to where his pace went. Meanwhile, Alonso, on a completely different level than Esteban, he was a key element, really, or the single gate between the front runners and the midfield. He was sort of the bottleneck for those trying to move forward, and the front runners becoming, this sort of movable chicane, if you will. But Fernando was super aggressive, made his car as wide as possible to hang on to ninth. He put up a great fight, but traffic did play a part. He lost that place to Stroll. Stroll put a great pass on him, but still delivered points. And it's quite a disparity between a points delivered in Alpine P9 running where they may expect them to be 7, 8, 9 and running down to 14th.
Yeah. I mean, we touched on this last time, but the signing of Ocon to that long-term contract has my head scratching for sure. I certainly don't think he's done enough to warrant them really signing him early and locking him in. And he kind of backed that thought up again, being lost out in the middle of nowhere. Little unfortunate. We know the midfield battle is tough, and he has had a couple of good races this year, but Alonso proved what is possible, and Ocon didn't.
Yeah. AlphaTauri, Pierre Gasly, DNF, Yuki Tsunoda, and P10. Pierre Gasly got clipped by Charles Leclerc and then managed to hit 3 other cars on his way back to the pits with a flat tire and damaged suspension. Pierre's DNF was unfortunate. And I kept wondering, and even at the end of the race, I looked where everybody finished, and I thought, where would Pierre have been in that mix? 5, 6, 7?
Yeah, I think it would have been fine out with Norris for sure.
Yeah. I think he would have too. So it's unfortunate. A bad weekend for him. To get taken out there. I guess he was stuck in a sandwich there and didn't have anywhere to go.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, first lap, everything's moving around. It can happen. But he couldn't get out of anyone's way at that point. I think who was it on the outside? Was that Giovinazzi? Yeah, that was kind of inadvisable move at that point. But anyway, there's not much Gasly could do. He didn't have a lot of front end steering ability, so he couldn't avoid anything. So well, that left Yuki as the sole survivor of the team. He managed to haul his car up to 10th for a point, so at least there's that. Yeah, I mean, finished the race, and but as you say, Gasly is the man that's really going to show you what that car's capable of right now, and he didn't even have a chance to do that. So it's unfortunate. Alfa Romeo, Kimi Räikkönen P11, Antonio Giovinazzi in P15. Antonio finished 15th again.
And he had a little help, as we just mentioned, because he was spun by Gasly on the first lap, and this left him in a recovery mode all day. So he battled back to 15th, but pretty much game over at that point. But for Kimi, he started on the hards. He ran long on that first stint to pass Vettel. Then he ran out of laps to get to the points. He was fighting for it. But then Charles Leclerc clipped a little bit of his front wing during a passing move, and he was unable to claw his way into the points.
Wow, that's a lot of words for the Alfa Romeo team.
It is,
because I'm not lost to say anything.
I covered it. You don't have to.
I'm waiting for a breakout from Kimi. Somehow, but that car just seems to be mediocre.
Yeah,
and there's not much you can do with a mediocre car. Hopefully
maybe his breakout will be in Spa.
Yeah, Spa or Monza. Hopefully,
Spa.
Hopefully they get a chance to really fight it out. But right now they're just kind of making up numbers.
Yeah. Williams, George Russell, DNF, Nicholas Latifi, P17. George had a great weekend going ball, had a terrific qualifying, then an equally awesome race going. But while running eighth, folks, in a Williams, the engine started an engine issue cropped up that prompted 2 stops trying to cure some sort of pneumatic pressure issue, and ultimately they retired the car. George may be making some wonder if he's done enough to earn a spot at Mercedes, and I would say that he's already done enough based on his performance this weekend in a Williams, no less, to earn that seat at Mercedes. But it was a truly inspired race. Great job. And I thought, he handled it really well. They were backing him into the garage, and the race engineer said, "Sorry about that, George. I'm so sorry. It was an engine issue," and blah, blah. And he said, "Nope, no worries, man. We're going to come back at him next week and we'll get the points next week." It's very positive, didn't beat anyone up. And it was a team effort. So, yep, it was a tough day in the office for George.
It is. But the team, even with Latifi, sometimes been showing that they've been making gains, and that this was, I think, obviously this is where it showed up the most right here.
Right.
Really, I mean, qualifying 11th without anyone making any stupid mistakes.
Right.
And just having a great car for the race, etc. So super.
Man, firing that Simon Roberts is totally the right thing to do.
Well, I was just going to bring that up because, to me, maybe they should have had a bit more patience. And I understand the theory that they're talking about in there, but I'm not sure what he came up with and what he started wasn't actually starting to work.
Yeah, right.
Remember they fired Newey at Leighton House right before he built a championship-winning car, right? So, right before the Leighton House got its best ever finish. So, sometimes things take a little while in Formula One, as McLaren know, as we've seen from time after time after time.
Yeah, sure.
So hopefully what they're doing is still able to be, they can keep that ball rolling, but I feel maybe that move might have been a bit more premature, and they're maybe going to keep themselves in the foot for making that decision so quickly, because something changed.
Yes,
something's starting to work in that team, even though they don't have a big budget.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. Whatever they're doing technically is starting to head in the right direction, whether that's chassis aero, whatever it might be. But it is starting to head in the right direction, and I'm actually very encouraged for that. I was concerned about Doralton coming in and buying them and what their commitment would be. And look, it's hard to go any lower than where they were when Doralton bought them. So there's only ways up, but they are going up, and that's good. It's good. Nick, he got caught out of the first he got caught out on the let me try this in English. He got caught up in the first lap clash and had to box early, and then spent the day trying to recover. Then he got caught and he became a blue flag cycle, at that point. So he was toast at that point. Yeah. Let's see. Haas, Mick Schumacher, P16, Nikita Mazepin, P18,
Favorite part of the day.
It is. Mick once again had the best of Nikita for the 7th time this year, and that's good as the two spent the day battling each other at the back of the grid. So there you go.
Yep. Did you order your Mazda spinning top yet?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
But I kind of look, I'm all for a good joke and a good hearty har guffaw, but I thought it was pretty bad when the team boss and the team, are making fun of their. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like, not really taking it very seriously anymore, are you? Got that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
That was amusing, but uncomfortably amusing.
it's exactly right. It was funny, and we all had a good laugh. But the more I thought about it, I thought that's uncomfortably funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Like, did Gunther have to get that approved by? I don't know. There's something weird about this whole year for them anyway. But that was another add-on for you.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's hand out some awards. The first award of the race that we always hand out is Move of the Race.
Woo! Stop yelling at Todd.
All right, Paul. Who did you give Move of the Race to?
I don't really give it to anyone in particular, but I gave it to the move on the outside of 4, the outside pass. There was, I with 3 DRS zones, what have we got left, right?
Right.
But even so I think there's some brave moves around the outside, even with a DRS assisted to get you out there. So cheers to all of the Formula One drivers that even attempted, even if it didn't pull off. But it's an exciting part of the track, and the battles there were intriguing to see if cars could make it through and if you could make the pass. And sometimes someone made a dive move, then it was a repass. So that part of the track I thought was
good. I gave it to Red Bull for their strategy, their split strategy, keeping Sergio and Lewis's way of any tactical undercut. And just really the way they executed that weekend, I thought it was kind of the move of the race, to be honest with you.
Yeah, certainly the move of Max's race, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. The clouds parted and there it was.
Lovely.
Yes, it was lovely. All right, next award is Donkey of the Race.
We'll do it live.
All right, Paul.
Can it be the donkey of the pre-race?
Possibly.
Donkey of the practice?
Donkey of the race weekend? Are you looking at Valtteri Bottas?
Donkey of the pit lane? Yeah.
Donkey of the tire warming burnout?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty donkey-worthy performance. I know there's a lot of people in the IMSA paddock that kept going, did you see what happened? And then went, oh man, that's bad.
That's bad, yeah. So I'm with you on that one. It is Donkey of the Race because it impacted his race, 3 grid place. He started 5th. He outqualified Lewis. Yeah, there's a Donkey of the Race. And finally, it's Drive of the Race. Ow! Good God.
It's in Lewis. You like my pace? You like it?
Heck yes, I like your pace,
Pretty
Sergio.
good, Sergio. Thank you, Sergio.
Yes, sirree. All right. Who'd you give the Drive of the Race to?
I'm giving it to Charles Leclerc.
Really? Yeah. Charles Leclerc.
Or is it Leclerc?
Yeah. Good.
Leclerc? Is that what everyone's agreed on?
I've seen him call himself Leclerc many times. Yes.
Okay. It just doesn't come out for me.
It doesn't Leclerc. I mean,
seems like a bad pronunciation of a French word.
It sounds like an American trying to pronounce a French name.
Right.
Leclerc. Right?
Yeah. Leclerc. My name is Leclerc, monsieur. And that is not my dog.
is that your Leclerc? It's not my Leclerc. I thought you said your Leclerc doesn't bite. Yeah. So something I totally agree.
Yeah.
So I think I asked my wife. Now she speaks fluent French, but I think I asked her, and I think she said it probably would be Leclerc. Yeah. Okay. So, but everybody in the media calls it Leclerc.
Yeah. It'll be whatever.
So we're just going to call
it a taco, and you're not stopping me from calling it.
It's taco. You say taco, right?
I said I'm going to call it taco.
So maybe we just call him Chuck the Clerk.
Yep, Chuck the Duck, man. Yep.
Yeah. Oh boy, I gave it to Max.
Okay, he had a fairly decent race.
I thought he had a lovely race.
I'm driving like a grandma.
He was not driving like a grandma out there.
Yeah.
it was one thing to go out and pull away a 1.5 second gap. He pulled 4 or 5 and kept it the whole time. Even when Mercedes tried to get race out. I remember when Bottas said, telling me to push on these tires was completely unnecessary because I cooked the tires, you know, anytime they tried to push and Lewis is like, you know, what's the delta? What do you want me to do? And they said, well, it's just getting it into the race now, Lewis. You know, there was no answer. And anytime they tried, Max would just pull it back out to 4.5, 5 seconds. Yep. He had it covered.
Yep. Sure did.
All right, let's get some mailbag.
You've got mail.
Ooh. Paul, I'm excited because this is a mailbag question, not about Formula One, it's about you and IMSA.
Nice. Just about me and IMSA, or
just
IMSA?
You and IMSA, your long sordid history with IMSA.
Oh, it's a long, that's a long history, man.
Right.
Yeah.
This is from Matt Fender. He says, hello, Todd and Paul. IMSA related comment here. I went to he went there. He was at the 6 hours of Watkins Glen.
Why didn't he come by and see me?
I don't know. I don't know why he should have. He should have done.
Hidden away in the trailer, typing away.
Yeah, I'm sure you were. He said the race was awesome. I was hoping Harder Racing could pull out a win, but it looked like you couldn't quite get by the Audi fast enough at the final restart, and then the Lambo and BMW were too far up the road. A couple IMSA questions, if that's allowed. Of course it is, Matt. Yes. He said, one, during the full course yellows, they had some trucks going around with some sort of sweeper looking thing attached to them. Is this to clean the marbles off the track? Do you any other series do this, since I haven't seen this before?
Well, it's to clean up all the sand that the BMW is leaving behind, because it was sandbagging the whole weekend. No, I'm just kidding. No, a little BOP joke for those sports car fans. But just clean up the rubber. That can certainly, during the yellows, the worst thing that happens if you got a hot tire and then you drive over the marbles, the clag, whatever you want to call it, and it can take like nearly two laps to get that off. So in deference for racing, because obviously when the marbles go out there, it narrows the racing line, right? You can't just drive onto a bunch of rubber and expect to outbrake somebody. So it opens up the playing field a little bit. So if there is enough time, they'll go out there and try and clean the track up in an efficient, speedy manner as best they can. And those we all like to see the track cleaned again, so it can go racing and not be inhibited by, I said, some of the.
So if there's is it in a yellow, Paul, do you try to keep Ian or Roman or anybody, are they weaving to try to keep temperature in the sidewalls and trying to do that? And it's a very narrow window, I would imagine, with all that buildup and marbles.
I mean that obviously the weaving doesn't really warm the tires up very much, certainly not in a car without a ton of downforce, right? You can warm the tires up in the corners when you get this load on the tire, but driving a straight line doing this doesn't really keep the tires, keep the heat in the tires. Best way is to do it is hard acceleration, hard braking, and as I said, working the wheel in the middle of the corner. But weaving down the straight keeps the tires clean. But as you said, if there's a lot of clag on either side, you start weaving, you're going to just start picking up the stuff you're trying to get rid of. So it's a fine line there.
Okay. Second question is, how were pit boxes assigned? It didn't seem like it was by class, just down. He said just down by your box, it was between a DPI and another prototype, but then the Turner GTD was only a few more boxes down the pit lane. As a general note, if all IMSA races are as open as this one was, I'd highly recommend, if you have an IMSA race close by, to go, since you could basically walk around wherever you wanted, and being able to get pretty much right behind the pit lane, and also seeing all the temporary garages where the cars are repaired was very cool.
Yeah, it is great to have the fans back. So thanks to everybody that came to the Glen. It's it was kind of weird last year. You're doing a TV race and there's no fans, there's no atmosphere. There's atmosphere, but not as much. So everyone, drivers, teams, IMSA are very, very grateful that we were able to open up, and evidently it was a last minute thing to do that at the Glen. The pit boxes. So we've seen both sides of it. Last year we came into the championship a bit late, so we were always farther back in the championship, and that's basically how those pit pit assignments are. We were up the far end because we're running second in championship right now, but only BMW were ahead of us. But if you're further back, it's a little bit different where you may get pitted next to another GTD car. So the reason why they split the GTDs with prototypes is because under the yellow, we pit on a different lap. So people who are up high in the championship, if all the prototypes come in, they're usually given a gap before them and after them to get in and out of their pit box easier. And works the same for us. We're not being hindered by a big prototype wing blocking us from getting out, because under a yellow flag, the pits open for prototypes first, then the next lap, the pits open for GT cars. So it just enables ingress and egress in and out of the pits a lot better for people that are really in the championship hunt. As I said, if you're a bit further back or a new team, you may get pitted next to a rival. And so you'll all be pitting at the same time, and you're all trying to get out of that tight box at the same time. So it's a bit of a handicap, so to speak.
Gotcha. All right. Well, Matt, thanks for the questions. I appreciate that.
Those DPI cars are really loud. Oh my God. You just hear the Cadillacs, Cadillacs are always next to the Cadillac or the Mazda. It's just like they're revving the crap out of the thing, and they're just flying out. It's like, whoa, what just exploded? And it's just nice though. Yeah. It's not a hybrid engine. But man, they're loud. Yeah,
that's awesome. I love loud engines. Good.
That is good.
Yeah. Of course, your car sounds pretty damn good, Paul.
It is, but it's not super loud.
It's a low growl.
It's a low growl. It's what it.
Yeah. Because I do like it.
Yeah. The rules don't allow us to really rev it out, but
yeah. Let's see. Derek Anderson asks, hello, I'd like to get TPF's take on mid-season rule changes. I know F1 and the FI are never consistent, but it bothers me that last season Mercedes DAS system was ruled legal and a clever gray area in the rules, but outlawed for this season. Then on the flip side, the flexi wing some teams run that passes all of the current load tests is deemed to be a problem, and new load tests and rules are created mid-season. Do you think it is right for rule changes mid-season? Should teams be allowed to enjoy their gray area advancements for at least a season, or somewhere in between? And where would you draw the line? It's a great question, Paul.
It is. I just don't know where the in-between is. I mean, in my heart, I'm like, you find an advantage, you find a loophole, you should be able to run it through the gamut, which they did with the Mercedes car with the DAS system.
And they did with the F duct.
Right.
And the dual diffuser.
Yes. But
the J damper, they didn't.
But, I think the dual diffuser, it was probably the last time they're going to let that happen, because with the financial limitations now, that comes into play too. And
True.
They're kind of helping the teams not spend money needlessly, which they would have to, to stay on target and be competitive if they didn't stop that momentum going and basically just escalating down the whole pit lane, which all the other teams would have to follow the flexi wing interpretation of the rule, etc. Right. The one thing about that system was that no one could follow that pathway at that point of the season.
It'd be way too expensive.
Right, for them to do that. So teams, and it wasn't as a massive of an advantage as some thought it was. Mercedes already had an advantage anyway, so hard to tell, right?
Yeah.
So I think the financial side is the biggest side of stopping that harassment, but I personally think people earn the right to, to the advantage they've drummed up. But I think for the sake of the budgets and the constraints, it's probably what we're going to have to see from here on out.
It's a great question, Derek, and I wish I had an intelligent answer. I probably don't, but I think things like aero, rear wings, flexi floors. You'll recall Ferrari had flexible floors, which prompted a mid-season decision. The Renault and their J dampers, that prompted a mid-season change, which hobbled immediately Renault. the DAS system, I think, was a clever way of changing the toe angle, maybe, or some aspect of the wheel angle, which would allow them to keep heat or warm the tires during cornering or yellow flags or whatever it might be. But apparently FIA didn't feel like it was a big enough gamble or a big enough breach of any sort of regulation. I think the challenge on the flexi wing issue is that they have this regulation and the wing shouldn't bend that much. It's understood that the wing shouldn't bend that much. But what the FI didn't have is the correct testing tools to test that load at that limit, and so they've had to go through and rejigger the regulations to get it to where it won't pass a certain aspect or it won't bend too much. And I think it was more a limitation of the FIA's testing or ability to test for that than it was a clever sort of innovation on their part. I think the materials they used passed the test as they were, and so they were compliant to the test. But this gets back to where we start talking about the spirit of the law or the letter of the law. And I think in this case, they felt like it changed. But it's a good point, Derek, and it's one that you could argue. You could go back through Formula One and look at these innovation, these sort of inflection points of innovation, whether it was the fan car, which prompted an immediate reaction. Ferrari's, as I said, the flexi floor. I'm trying to think of some other ones. The F duct was one of them, which prompted and made DRS. So the F duct came before DRS. It was allowed and then banned. So I think it's certainly any sort of aero advantages, illegal wings, flexing floors, wings, aero parts, all that you will get a prompt decision. Yeah. Other things may not. The dual diffuser was a innovative thing that the FIA allowed, and then everybody had to get a dual diffuser. And to Paul's point with the cost cap, not everybody's going to be able to afford that because that's a chassis change. And difficult to do. So F1's littered with those decisions. That's a great point, though.
Yeah, and it's a shame, right? Because part of Formula One, is the innovation and seeing these very, very clever people come up with all kinds of different ways and really thinking outside the box. And unfortunately, like people like Renault with their damper system, it's like, then when they have to take it away and they've designed the whole vehicle around it, they actually end up being in a worse position for being, creative, which I don't think is correct. So probably a middle ground is probably where it should be, but I just don't know how to achieve that,
Another one I was thinking of Williams, active suspension.
Right.
Another very innovative technology that. Anyway, but great question, Derek. I loved it. It was a good question. And let us know what you guys think about it, Derek's question. I think it raises a good point on which things were immediately banned in season and which innovation points were allowed to go on for the rest of the year, the balance of the year, and then maybe outlawed or maybe kept. Who knows? But good points. All right. Well, that does it for this podcast. Paul, thanks for joining us from the hotel room, fresh from your podium. You probably still smell like champagne this morning.
Yeah. No, I got a shower. I just remembered. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like we're like running in tandem with Formula One because they've got the Styrian Grand Prix and they've got the next race at the same track and we're doing the same thing. So we just did the 6 hours at Glen, and then on Friday we've got a sprint race at the Glen. So we're staying here a week to race at the track 2 weeks in a row. So
that's great.
Yeah,
well, that's excellent. All right. Well, then we get to talk to you in a week. Yes, probably not from a hotel room, though, I take it.
I will be home next time.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, be sure to stop by the website, theparcfermé.com. Share your opinion. Just do it with decorum and civility, as always. If you like the podcast, go to iTunes. Give us a little love. Give us a good rating over there at iTunes. We'd appreciate it. Share this podcast with your friends. Tell your friends about it. Why not? It's not going to hurt them. Oh. And also, thank you so much to our Patreon supporters out there, because if we didn't have you, we would not and could not produce this podcast. So thanks for doing that and all of the support you've given us. and the good news on the YouTube, I think I figured out how to remove all of the ads. So we'll find out on this podcast if I get it right.
Yeah,
So,
hopefully. I'm about fed up with those Colonial Panda ads.
I know everybody's like, yo, there's ads. This is stupid. This free podcast I've been listening to for 480 episodes, and you got ads. You a-holes. So sorry about that. So anyway, I'll work on that. But until next week, when we come back, and keep in mind, folks, they're going a step softer with the compounds in Austria. Ooh. Could that see Lewis jump back to the front? Or is Toto right? They've just phoning it in. Is Toto right? Has Mercedes become the very expensive Haas of 2021?
That's right. Yeah, Toto's not even going to show up to half the races.
No, he'll probably give Lewis a spinny top thing, not spending any money on the car. We're just going to let the drivers go around. Yeah, is that what Toto's telling us?
Yeah, we're very happy with second in championship.
We're very happy with wherever we are.
Yeah. That's what the Mercedes juggernaut is built for.
Yeah, right. Yeah, think not. All right, until next week when we do it all over again. This is Todd, aka Negative Gamer, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.